the question you have to ask is, after a decade of Liberal promises, can you afford food? Is your housing more affordable than it used to be? What is your cost of living like compared to what it was a decade ago? And are you prepared to elect the same Liberal MPs, the same Liberal ministers, the same Liberal staffers all over again for a fourth term? Mr. Carney, Justin Trudeau's staffers are actually here with you at this debate in Montreal, writing the talking points that you are regurgitating into the microphone. How can we possibly believe that you are any different than the previous 10 years of Liberal government?
25 seconds left in this segment for you to respond to that.
Look, I do my own talking points. Thank you very much.
Pierre Poilievre comes out swinging in the English language debates, and I think it's no question who won this one. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to a brand new episode of Johnny Says So, episode 33. And tonight, I want to share a couple of my thoughts on the English language debates that just wrapped up here tonight. Now, I think there's no question as to who won this one. Pierre Poilievre came out swinging against Mark Carney. In fact, all of the candidates, save for Jagmeet Singh, came out swinging at Mark Carney. Jagmeet was sort of defending him on a lot of things, as per usual. But you know, if there's one clip that can sum up the entire night, I think this is it.
It's the Krusty Burglar!
Oh my God, he's stealing all the burgers! Why, you little... I got you! You!
It's all just an act.
Stop! Stop! He's already dead.
Who doesn't love a good Simpsons reference? But seriously, the first clip I want to get to tonight is during the opening segment of the debate when they are talking about dollar-for-dollar tariffs and the response that Canada should have to the Trump administration. You know, the question that has hijacked the entire point of this election and has really given Mark Carney the only lead that he has. Now, Pierre Poilievre asks him a simple question to clarify his contradiction on his energy policies. Mark Carney refuses to answer the question, and Jagmeet Singh tries to rush to his defense.
Everyone in, then Mr. Singh.
Well, Mr. Carney, you claim that you want our country to respond with strength, but after the last decade, half of which time you've been Justin Trudeau's economic advisor, our economy is weaker than ever before. It's been the worst growth in the G7. We've lost $500 billion of investment south of the border. You supported blocking pipelines in Canada that gave Donald Trump and the U.S. a near monopoly over our energy. And now you want to keep in place Bill C-69, the Liberal no new development law that blocks us from shipping our resources overseas. How could you possibly think it's a good idea to give the Americans a continued monopoly on our energy projects when you have seen how much these Liberal policies have weakened our country over the last decade?
Let Mr. Carney respond, and then Mr. Singh.
Sure. If I may, yes. So let's go to my record. My record is a month long as Prime Minister. And this goes to the heart of coming to the Americans with strength, but doing the right thing for Canada. Within the first week as Prime Minister, I sat down with all the premiers of the provinces and territories, as well as the leaders of the Indigenous peoples. Got an agreement with all the provinces and territories, doesn't happen very often, got an agreement for them to have one Canadian economy instead of 13, first point. Secondly, to commit the federal government to do its part by Canada Day, so free trade in Canada by Canada Day. Thirdly, the federal government to commit with respect to project reviews.
The question was about pipelines.
I'm getting to it. Thirdly, one project, one review, and relying
That's
on provincial. Yes, it is possible under. It is possible on our system.
No,
it is the impact assessment. It is agreed on under the impact assessment framework, and we have a cooperation agreement with British Columbia already. We're looking forward to them with the other provinces. We will move forward.
Mr. Singh's turn, please.
Of course, we agree around having a strategic response to the United States. But what I'm concerned about is what we're doing here in Canada. We are already seeing threats to our country in that just the threats alone of the tariffs have meant Canadians have lost their jobs. The threats of the tariffs that are in place right now, the impact of the sector, people are already losing their jobs. And while, Mr. Carney, you had time, as you mentioned, not very long time, but as Prime Minister, you showed us your priorities. The first thing you did is you had traveled, you made a tax cut for millionaires, which was reversing on the capital gains. So you gave a tax cut to millionaires, but you didn't have time to increase the amount that workers get on EI. Right now, workers who are struggling and wondering, what am I going to do if I lose my job? Workers who've lost their job are saying, how do I pay my bills when EI only covers half of a worker's salary?
Do you see what I mean when I say Jagmeet Singh is rushing to Mark Carney's defense? Now, whenever it's convenient for the NDP, he will pretend to go against him on these issues that you know the Liberals are going to collaborate with them on in the future. We've seen it time and time again. This whole friendly rivalry between the Liberals and the NDP is just an act.
Maybe 40 years ago that would have worked, but right now most workers are spending their entire salary just to pay the bills, to pay their mortgage and their rent, and to put food on the table. So EI is not good enough, and it shows Canadians that you didn't make it a priority to protect those that are impacted by these tariffs, that are threatened because their jobs are lost.
We have not heard from Monsieur Blanchet yet.
Now, one thing I want to add to that is, what is Jagmeet Singh talking about? Mark Carney has said time and time again that he's going to put up $6 billion in funds to help with the job losses that our retaliatory tariffs against the United States are going to cause. He's made it very clear he's willing to spend more money on the response to our retaliatory tariffs than Justin Trudeau put up initially to help secure the border. It's absolutely crazy, guys.
In this segment, so please.
Yeah, Mr. Carney, you are becoming a real Canadian leader, saying one thing in French and another one in English. You said in British Columbia in February that you would force oil and gas through pipelines through Quebec, either we wanted it or not. You would use emergency powers in order to do so. And 2 days later in Montreal, you said that you would never do that without the approval of Quebec. What's the point of using emergency powers if you do have the agreement of Quebec? However, I do agree with you. It's important to be very strong in front of Mr. Trump. However, I would keep the dollar for dollar policy. Don't be weak in front of Mr. Trump. And those...
While I don't agree with the leader of the Bloc Québécois here, I absolutely love how he's calling Mark Carney out on his hypocrisy. And if this is going to cause the Bloc to surge in Quebec and take some seats away from the Liberals, I am 100% here for it.
From Mr. Poilievre, and then a response from Mr. Carney.
Well, Mr. Carney refused to answer the question about pipelines. Just the other day, he said that he doesn't necessarily think we need to build pipelines. Let me tell you what that means. Right now, the Americans get 97% of our oil, 100% of our natural gas exports at big discounts. We have to send Canadian oil from Western Canada through the States just to get it back to Quebec because we don't have a pipeline. And now there's this law, Liberal Law C-69, which effectively bans pipelines. The 14 biggest energy and resource companies say it has to go if we're ever going to build another project. And I asked Mr. Carney why he would keep in place this anti-pipeline law that effectively empowers Donald Trump to have a total monopoly on our single biggest export. Why would you not repeal this Liberal law? Isn't it because you are exactly the same in the same line as Justin Trudeau and the rest of the Liberal team that is now making up your cabinet?
Let's get a response.
Well, let me pick up a couple of points that have been made. The first thing I did as Prime Minister was to cut the carbon tax. That's the first thing. Second thing is made a commitment that all proceeds from our tariffs will...
Again, he's not answering the question. And I love how he has to throw that in there. The first thing I did was I cut the carbon tax. Right, so you're admitting that it was a bad idea. Perfect. Go on.
Go to workers and those companies most affected. There were several points
means
raised.
Nothing so far.
If I may, Mr. Steve, if I may address, I'm trying to do it quickly because several points raised. All proceeds go to workers and the firms most effective, and those proceeds are considerable. Third thing, I'm interested in solutions. I'm interested in getting energy infrastructure built. That means pipelines, that means carbon capture, storage, that means electricity grids. And here's how you do it. And we've already moved in the first month. Cooperation agreements with the provinces. Guess what? We are a federation. You need to cooperate with Quebec. You need to cooperate with the provinces. You need to get First Nations and Indigenous people buy-in. You can do that through the one project, one review window that we put in place at that first ministers' meeting, as well as, if necessary, using emergency powers to fulfill the federal responsibility, but not the unique.
Mr. Poilievre, you want to come back on that?
What you're saying, Mr. Carney, with respect, is a total contradiction. The No New Development Law, C-69, guarantees there will not be one-stop shop because it requires the Government of Canada to actually duplicate
So what Mr. Poilievre is saying is that have no rules,
project.
have no regulation,
have one-stop
control
shop.
over any energy
Mr. Singh, we just got to let him
Let
finish
big
his sentence.
polluters pollute.
Let's just let him finish his sentence.
That is not true. In fact, Mr. Singh, the reality is we should have strong rules.
I love how Jagmeet Singh is just there in the background trying to strawman everything Poilievre says. Now, I'm not going to get into the entire debate tonight, but if you've watched the entire thing, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about.
Rules enforced once. We shouldn't have multiple levels of referral that it takes now 17 years to get a major.
There he is again. It's the first time I've heard you care about the environment. Look at him back there. Completely irrelevant.
Major project approved in this country. That is why in the last 10 years we've had the worst economic growth in the entire G7. We cannot afford a fourth Liberal term. We need a change, and the Conservative plan for a change will include repealing the anti-pipeline law so we can get our energy to markets other than the United States.
Mr. Singh, then Mr. Carney.
While these two compete about who's more pro-pipeline, I think what we need to do is, it's clear. The Liberals bought a pipeline. They built a pipeline. I don't know what Pierre is complaining about. That's what they did. I think what we need to do, if we're talking about energy in our country, we need to build an east-west grid. Let's use our power as a nation to build a national project that creates good jobs, that strengthens us for the future, where we connect the low-cost energy from jurisdictions and provinces across this beautiful land.
Sort of like a pipeline, sort of like fossil fuels, sort of like the thing that you have been pretending to be against for a decade now, alongside Justin Trudeau's Liberals. Now all of a sudden with this trade war with the United States, it's a good idea. Again, I don't know how people put trust in people who are such blatant hypocrites. Now this next segment is pure gold. This is towards the end of the debate during the Leader's Choice segment where each candidate gets a chance to raise whatever issue they want with whomever they want. Pierre Poilievre is on point and professional with his attacks against Mark Carney, and Mark Carney tries to turn it around on him, and Pierre Poilievre brings an absolute slam dunk. Watch this, guys.
To ask the question of whomever he'd like here, and that will be
Mr. Carney. But if I could begin by setting the stage. The choice in this election is, after a lost Liberal decade of rising cost and crime and a falling economy under America's thumb, do we want to elect them to a fourth term? Or do we want to change? Change so that you can afford food and homes. Change so that you can be safe on your street, and change so that your paycheck grows faster than your cost of living. Change with a new Conservative government. Because Mr. Carney is not change. Mr. Carney, in 2020, it was recorded, you began advising Justin Trudeau. It's still on the Liberal Party website today that you are Justin Trudeau's economic advisor. They might want to update your website on that. On June 3rd of 2021, you said that inflation would be a sign of economic progress. And you advised governments, including Justin Trudeau's, your Liberal government, to print money, which led to the worst inflation crisis in a generation. Now, that means that mothers went to bed with empty fridges and empty bank accounts, worried how they'd feed their kids, that seniors worried they'd be evicted from their homes, that young people believed they'd never be able to own a home in the first place. Now, in retrospect, that you look back on the Liberal decisions that you advised Justin Trudeau to take, will you look at the camera in the eye and apologize to the many people who suffered as a result of the inflationary policies that you advised Justin Trudeau to implement?
You know, I said earlier, but I'm going to say it again. I know you want to be running against Justin Trudeau. Justin Trudeau isn't here.
Are you denying you were his
here.
economic advisor?
I did not provide any of that advice. I did not provide any of that
it's
advice.
on the Liberal Party website.
I'm sorry. Well,
Are you accusing your Liberal Party of lying about your role? Because it says today you can go to the Liberal Party website now, and it says that you were Justin Trudeau's economic advisor.
The way you judge someone, in my view, is how they act, what they do when they have responsibility. Twice I was a central bank governor, and in both cases, if I may, in both cases when I was responsible for inflation, inflation was less than 2%. I'll add that when I was here responsible for the Bank of Canada, inflation was less than 2%. Our dollar was at parity. That is the kind of success that I can deliver for this country coming out of this crisis. And what is at stake here?
You were the economic advisor to Justin Trudeau that gave us the worst inflation that we have had in a generation, because the policies that you implemented and those of the MPs that are still in your ministry.
To the
fellow Canadians,
crisis which
the last 10 years has been about the Liberals. The next 10 years should be about you.
And that's time. Mr. Carney, the good news is the next question is yours.
Well, I'm going to ask myself a question.
And did you hear that? The moderator isn't even really hiding his bias there.
Actually, I'm going to ask a question which has been troubling me. And it's troubling me because, we are in a very dangerous and divided world.
Who is it to?
I'm going to ask a question of Mr. Poilievre. Why not? We're in a dangerous and divided world. We talked earlier about the challenges in the Middle East, the threats from Iran, threats from Russia, Russia's aggression in Ukraine. We have the threats from China, which I raised. We have the United States, which is fundamentally changing its security relationships, its commercial relationships. We have all this. And in the context of that, everyone on this stage, Mr. Blanchet, Mr. Singh, myself, we have our top secret security clearance. We have our top secret security clearance. I got mine.
Here we go again. This tired narrative. This is really the ammunition that Mark Carney has in the chamber for the very end of the debate, where he gets to raise any issue he wants. This tired shtick. Now, I already debunked this whole thing in a previous video about Pierre Poilievre's security clearance. I won't get too much into it because Pierre Poilievre does a very good job of defending himself here.
Within 3 weeks, it wasn't hard, but I felt it was important that I had it so I could be in a position to be informed about that dangerous world and take decisions out. And Mr. Poilievre, it is now 950 days, if my numbers are right, since you've had the opportunity to get your top secret security clearance, and you've refused. Why?
Well, first of all, I have got my security clearance when I was a minister. I got top secret clearance at the time, so there's no problem getting that. But when the government made this recent offer, they said that if I got the secret security clearance briefings, that I would be gagged under the security law, and I could be prosecuted if I spoke freely about matters of foreign interference. Now, given that...
Now, Pierre Poilievre has been completely vindicated on this issue. From the National Post, Poilievre has been vindicated for refusing security clearance. Had the Conservative leader gone through with it, he could have faced legal consequences for his comments on Chinese interference in this election.
Canada has experienced Chinese interference by Beijing, the government of China, in 2 consecutive elections. I needed to do my job to speak freely without fear of prosecution. And that was not something I would be allowed to do. Even Thomas Mulcair, the former leader of the NDP, said that when he was the leader of the opposition, he never would have accepted the kind of gag order that your government and Mr. Trudeau's government was attempting to impose on me. And it's good that I'd made that decision, because it has allowed me to speak freely about things like the case where one of your candidates, sir, actually said that he wanted to send a political opponent to China under a bounty threatening his life or imprisonment, and you refused to get rid of him. Now, it might have something to do with the fact that you went to China not long ago to get a $250 million loan for your company. But the reality is you refused to stand up for a Canadian who was being threatened by a foreign government. And I was able to speak freely on that matter because I refused the gag order that the Liberal government attempted to impose on me.
Well, there's a couple of interesting things. I think people at home have seen a robust debate here, and it's been a robust campaign, and it has not stopped Mr. Blanchet or Mr. Singh at times during his campaign by making challenges with respect to these issues. So one can address it. I will observe, as someone with a top secret security clearance, that China is not the only country that is accused of foreign interference. And
gentlemen, that is time
we'll leave
for
it
this
at
segment. That's our time. Now, closing statements are still a few minutes down the road, so we have a little bit of time for some quick hit Q&As for each of you right now. Short questions, 45 seconds, please, on the answers, and we're going to go left to right as I look at you right now. Mr. Poilievre, you get the first question. To the best of my knowledge, you have not offered a hard timeline, as the other parties have, to meet Canada's NATO commitment of 2% spending on defence. When would you hit that target?
My aim will be to 2030. That said, when we renegotiate our trade deal with the U.S., I know it's their priority to see us increase our military budget. One of the things I will say to the Americans is the more free trade.
Now, I really like this, guys. Pierre Poilievre is basically saying that if he becomes prime minister, he is going to do everything in his power to knock off this ridiculous trade war and actually make an effort to sit down with the Americans and renegotiate the trade agreements instead of, as Mark Carney himself puts it, harm the Americans and harm Canadians. Because, as I've said before, tariffs are just a tax. Retaliatory tariffs hurt Canadians.
Trade, tariff-free free trade we have, the faster we can rebuild our military in Canada and reassert our sovereignty. And we will use that money to have heavy icebreakers in the north, Poseidon aircraft, fighter jets, a new base in the north, double the Arctic Rangers, fill the vacancies in the armed forces, and rebuild the warrior spirit that characterized our military since the birth of our country. We will rebuild our forces, and we will stand behind our veterans.
Thank you, Mr. Poilievre. Mr. Carney, your question. You have cut both the consumer carbon tax and the capital gains tax increase that you inherited from your predecessor. Is that an admission that the Liberals made life less affordable for Canadians?
I think the...
Boom. What a great question from the moderator.
Let me give you the rationale behind both of those changes. First, with respect to the consumer carbon tax, in effect, it become too divisive for Canadians. Canadians received rebates. On the whole, they received more than the tax actually was, but some had represented that it was a tax without a rebate. It became divisive. It didn't serve its purpose. It made a relatively modest contribution to overall climate goals.
Okay, so that completely flies in the face of everything you, Mr. Carney, have been saying for years. You and your entire Liberal cabinet and Justin Trudeau have been saying the complete opposite. Apparently, this tax was going to do wonders to help the environment. And now he is admitting that the whole thing was useless and they had the power to make your lives better this entire time, but they didn't. And that's my show for tonight, guys. Now I'd love to turn it over to you folks in the comments. Who do you think came out on top of this debate? And did you think it moved the needle in any meaningful direction for anybody? And as always, if you like my video, please smash the like button and most importantly, subscribe. Together, we can override the lying, dying legacy media. And as always, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.